Hello everybody. So we're going to talk today about how farmers markets can change the world. So I'll introduce myself really quickly. My name is Shir Halpern, and I'm an entrepreneur. I started Tel Aviv Farmers Market in the port of Tel Aviv in 2008. My background is culinary. I studied in Paris in the Cordon Bleu, and after that I moved to DC and I worked as a chef. And actually in DC, this was the place where I fell in love with farmers market and decided to bring it to Israel. So in 2010 we started the Ports Market, Shuk Namar, and just last week I finished my MBA here in the IDC. And really the subject that I was really passionate about was sustainability and how it relates to what I do professionally. So, what is wrong with this world today? Usually when we talk about sustainability, I find that they talk about recycling, about environmental issues. Rarely they talk about food. But since we all eat, and we eat every day, food actually has some burning matters that has to do with sustainability. And to put it just very quickly, the modernization of food, the industrialization of food is really bringing us down. And the consumption, the production, the circulation of food has some serious burning aspects on society, on culture, and on the environment. So just to name a few, big burning problems, we can talk about obesity, we can talk about hunger, diabetes, waste of food, and of course, because we talk about the industrialization of food, you really lose the connection to the source of food. To the natural source of food when we think about processed food and fast food and all that. So how can we change the world? Or in other words, what can we really do about it? So what I want to show you, what I want to claim is that just by buying in a farmer's market, for example, just by this simple act, when you go and you buy your fresh carrots or your purple potatoes or your green tomatoes, in this simple act of transaction, you can really tackle those burning issues of social, cultural, and environmental issues of sustainability just by going there. So I want to show you how to do that in 5 small steps. Number 1, buy local. Most of our food, I don't know if you know it, but most of our food travels. We talk about food miles. Food in the world is being imported and exported today, most of the food. More than 90% in the US of fresh food, of produce like vegetables and fruit, is being imported. It's not locally grown. So this is really a burning issue. Of course, you can think about the environmental aspect of it, of course, of the ecological footprint of all this food being traveled around. But more of it, it's about losing the local traditions of food. And you can see this cold chain. Maybe this is the time when I talk to my friends about it, I realize that not a lot of them know what it means that something is industrially grown. So for example, when you go to the supermarket, you may presume that the apple that you see is locally grown, but if it's not imported, it's industrially grown. What does that mean? It means that in order to control these big quantities, they harvest the fruit or vegetable early, so it doesn't ripen naturally. And in order for it to really stand this cold chain, as we call it, of transportation and refrigeration, it has to be modified. It can be modified with chemicals, it can be modified with gas or wax. And by that, when you go to the supermarket, you see those apples that look exactly the same, or the tomatoes that look exactly the same shape and color. And they look like plastic, and usually taste like plastic as well. And that's the reason why. Of course, in this process of harvesting early, they lose the nutrition value because it doesn't ripen naturally, and also we lose the taste, the flavor. So number 2, buying season. We can definitely, all of us today, we can say that we know that we lost seasonality. Because we have, in the supermarket, we can find vegetables and fruit all year long. So of course, one of the aspects are, as I said before, that if something is not grown locally and you can't find it in season, it must be grown in a hothouse or shipped from really other countries. So again, it doesn't have the nutrition value or the taste. But I think there's another aspect, more culturally or even emotionally. Because when we talk about season, when we're talking about eating the watermelon in its season and anticipating for it and having it in its full flavor, I think this is another part of food as culture of what we talk about. So when you eat something in season, of course, it's also cheaper and it's fresher and it has its full taste. You also have this experience of food that is local and fresh. Number 3, special varieties. So when we talk about special varieties or heirloom varieties, if you heard about it, it can be 15 kinds of cherry tomatoes or these colored carrots or wild berries or these colored beets that you see here. All these special varieties, why do we need them? Why is it important? Why am I so excited about this special varieties? Well, again, these are varieties that some of them are ancient, that some people remember from childhood, like wild strawberries and remember the taste. But again, they don't fit the supermarket economy. So, because some of the produce in the supermarket have to be refrigerated for up to 1 year sometimes. So, for example, these carrots, the indication that they are really fresh and that someone picked them a day before is the green leaves and the leftover dirt over them. And of course, in the supermarket, you can't find something that is super fresh because it can last for a few days and not up to a year. And another aspect that some of these varieties, that some are ancient and some are new developments of agriculture, they need like an education. They need someone who can explain why this white thing is really an eggplant, an Asian kind of eggplant. And in a farmer's market, you can do that. You can learn about the special varieties. And this is what we like to call biodiversity. Because especially when you come from a culinary area, this is really our colors to play with. So as many varieties as we have, again, talking about food as culture, we want as much diversity as possible to have. No middleman. So this guy you see here, his name is Yaniv, and he makes olive oil in Kfar Uziyahu. And not only does he make the olive oil himself, he grows the olives himself. This is something really hard to find, I can tell you, in Israel and in the world in general. So one of the big problems that small producers can't compete with the big chains, with their numbers. Economically, they just start to demise. And when you buy in a farmer's market, you buy from the person who grows or makes the cheese, who makes the olive oil. All your money goes straight to him. And this is a really important consumer choice to make. Because not only you support the producer himself, but you support the tradition. You support the creation. And I think this tackles another thing that is about knowledge. That I think today as consumers, we have no knowledge about our food. If we go back to the supermarket again, when you go to this apple, and you want to look at the fine print to know where is it grown and how, rarely you can find this even fine print. So also by having a no middleman and buying straight from the farmer or straight from the producer, you can also have knowledge about how it's been made, what is the variety of the olives, etc. So number 4, here we go to number 5. Small-scale production. So sometimes people say boutique or artisanal, and it sounds a bit, fancy. Sometimes maybe even an excuse for it to be a bit more expensive in a way. But small scale is really, in comparison to industrial production of food, really when you have the process of food being industrialized, you have to give up quality in a way. If you think about cheese, using milk powder, of course, in vegetable and fruit and all of it. So it's really, when you talk about small-scale production, you can really control, again, in the quality, in the taste. When you have cheese from a cheesemaker, from a local cheesemaker. It's really seasonal. It's funny to say, but you can see the difference between season and season because it has the taste of the milk, of the sheep, of the goat, of the earth in the season. So it's really also a seasonal experience. So to sum up, it's really about, this was just, buying in a farmer's market is just one example. And the idea is that in one consumer choice, in one private choice, I think you can really make a difference. And it's like a wave reaction. I don't know if this translates into English, but it's really like wave reactions that you make in one private choice that really affects all these components that we talked about. And I really believe that in this day of age, it's more of a private, responsibility to, when we talk about food, to know what goes into our body, to be aware of it, to be as knowledgeable as possible, to support our community, but also as entrepreneurs, when we create new ventures or new business models, I think it's sort of a responsibility to take in mind those sustainable issues. So, to sum up, these are the values: eat local and seasonal and fresh, and in contact with the people who made the product. And does it go back? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you can see this, really cold chain that we saw in the beginning, how it shortened from the farmer to the market. And if you remember this farmer from the beginning with the watermelon, you can see now in the market, and this whole new consumer experience and food system. So it's a small revolution. As I said, farmers market is one example of it. But I really believe in small revolutions.